The frigid January air bit at Marcus Thompson's face as he jogged along the lakeside path, his breath forming white clouds that dissipated into the gray afternoon. He was exhausted from pulling a double shift at the construction site, but the exercise helped clear his mind before he picked up his daughter from school. 7-year-old Emma was his entire world, and even though money was tight, he made sure she never felt the weight of his struggles. The icy lake stretched beside him like a dark mirror, its surface reflecting the overcast sky, and he was so lost in thought about the bills stacking up on his kitchen counter that he almost didn't hear the screaming. "Help! Someone help!" The voice was panicked, high-pitched, and coming from the direction of the water. Marcus's head snapped toward the sound, his construction-hardened muscles already tensing. About 50 yards ahead, he could see a woman flailing near the edge of the dock, and then, with a horrible splash, she disappeared beneath the surface of the lake. His brain registered the danger in an instant. The water temperature this time of year was barely above freezing. She had maybe minutes before hypothermia set in. He didn't think. Thinking would have reminded him that he had a daughter waiting for him, that he was the only parent she had left, that diving into near-freezing water was reckless and dangerous. Instead, his body moved on pure instinct, his work boots pounding against the frozen ground as he sprinted toward the dock. He shed his jacket mid-run, knowing the heavy fabric would drag him down, and barely broke stride as he launched himself off the dock into the icy water. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs and sending shocks of pain through every nerve ending. The water was so cold it burned, and for a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the overwhelming sensation of freezing. But then he saw her, just beneath the surface, her long, dark hair floating around her like seaweed, her eyes wide with terror as she struggled against the weight of her waterlogged winter coat. Marcus forced his limbs to move, fighting through the numbness already creeping into his fingers. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward him, wrapping one arm around her waist as he kicked toward the surface. Breaking through felt like escaping from a frozen tomb, and he gasped for air, his chest heaving as he tried to keep both their heads above water. "I've got you," he managed to say through chattering teeth. "Stop fighting me. I've got you." She was panicking, clawing at him, her movements erratic and dangerous. He knew panic could drown them both, so he tightened his grip and started swimming toward the dock with powerful, determined strokes. His muscles screamed in protest, the cold making every movement feel like he was swimming through molasses, but he kept going. Years of manual labor had built strength and endurance, and he called on every ounce of it now. A crowd had gathered on the dock, and hands reached down to pull them from the water. Someone threw a blanket over the woman as soon as she was on solid ground, and another person wrapped one around Marcus's shoulders. He was shaking violently, his teeth chattering so hard he thought they might crack, but he was alive. They both were. "Someone call 911, a voice shouted, already on it. Marcus bent over, hands on his knees, trying to catch his breath and fight the urge to vomit from the adrenaline crash. The woman was sitting on the dock now, wrapped in multiple blankets that someone had retrieved from their car, and she was staring at him with the most striking green eyes he had ever seen. "You saved my life," she said, her voice trembling from cold and shock. "You just jumped in without hesitation." "Anyone would have done the same," Marcus replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. The crowd had been standing there screaming, frozen in their own fear. "What's your name?" she asked, reaching out a shaking hand toward him. "Marcus." "Marcus Thompson." He took her hand briefly, noting how delicate it felt despite the cold. "You should save your energy. Ambulance will be here soon." Diana Preston." She pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "I need to know your full name, where you live." "I need to be able to thank you properly." Marcus waved off the concern. "I don't need thanks, just glad you're okay. What happened anyway?" Diana's pale face flushed slightly. "I was taking photos of the lake, got too close to the edge. My foot slipped on some ice and I just went in." My coat got so heavy so fast, and I couldn't get my bearings. She shuddered at the memory. If you hadn't been there, I would have died. The ambulance arrived with sirens blaring, and paramedics rushed toward them with equipment and thermal blankets. They insisted on taking both Marcus and Diana to the hospital for observation, standard procedure for cold water immersion. Marcus tried to protest, explaining he needed to pick up his daughter, but the paramedics were insistent, and a kind woman from the crowd volunteered to contact the school and explain the situation. Is there someone who can get your daughter? Diana asked as they were loaded into the ambulance. Her best friend's mom, Caroline. She'll take Emma home with them until I can get there. Marcus looked at his watch, which had somehow survived the plunge. I was supposed to pick her up in 20 minutes. I'm so sorry, Diana said, genuine distress in her voice. You risked everything to save a stranger, and now you're missing time with your daughter. She'll understand, Marcus replied, though he hated disappointing Emma. Better than her having to grow up without a father at all. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Diana studied him carefully, taking in his worn jeans, the calloused hands, the tired lines around his eyes that spoke of someone who worked hard and worried often. He studied her too, noticing despite himself the quality of her clothes, the expensive camera that someone had rescued from near the dock, the designer purse that had been salvaged from the scene. At the hospital, they were separated into different examination rooms. Marcus was stripped of his wet clothes, given heated blankets and warm Roman IV fluids, and lectured by a stern doctor about the dangers of cold water rescue. He nodded through it all, just wanting to be cleared to leave so he could get to Emma. When they finally released him 2 hours later with instructions to watch for delayed symptoms of hypothermia, he borrowed a hospital phone and called Caroline. Marcus, thank God you're okay. Emma is fine. She's here playing with Sophie, and she's so proud of her daddy, the hero. Caroline's warm voice was a balm to his frayed nerves. Can I come get her? Why don't you go home and rest? The school told me what happened. Emma can stay for dinner and a sleepover if you need the night to recover. Marcus wanted to refuse, wanted his daughter with him, but he was bone-tired and still shaking despite the heated blankets. If you're sure it's not an inconvenience. Never. Emma is always welcome here. You take care of yourself and we'll see you tomorrow morning. As Marcus hung up, a nurse approached him. Mr. Thompson, Miss Preston is asking if she can see you before you leave. She's in room 214. He almost said no. He wanted to go home, wanted to collapse into bed and sleep for 12 hours. But something made him nod, and he followed the nurse down the sterile hospital corridor to Diana's room. She looked better than she had on the dock. Color returned to her cheeks, her dark hair dried and falling in waves past her shoulders. She was sitting up in bed, looking at her phone, but she set it aside immediately when Marcus entered. They're releasing me in a few minutes, she said. I wanted to see you before you left, to thank you properly. You already thanked me, Marcus said, suddenly aware of his borrowed hospital scrubs and the fact that his clothes were still wet and stuffed in a plastic bag. No, I screamed at you while drowning and then got you admitted to a hospital, Diana corrected with a slight smile. That's not thanking you, that's inconveniencing you massively. She picked up a business card from the table beside her bed. This is my contact information. Please, I'd like to take you to dinner. You and your daughter, it's the least I can do. Marcus took the card, glancing at it briefly. It was heavy stock, embossed, the kind of card that cost more per 100 than he spent on groceries in a week. Diana Preston, CEO, Preston Industries, he read aloud. His eyebrows rose. Preston Industries? The tech company? Among other things, Diana said carefully, watching his reaction. Does that change things? Should it? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. In my experience, yes. People either treat me differently because of money or they want something from me. Her green eyes were sharp, assessing. You really have no idea who I am, do you? Should I? Marcus tucked the card into his pocket. I don't exactly run in tech industry circles. I'm a foreman at a construction company, and most of my time is spent with a 7-year-old who thinks I hung the moon. Something in Diana's expression softened. A 7-year-old daughter, Emma. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus felt the familiar warmth spread through his chest that he always felt when talking about his daughter. Her mom passed when she was 3, been just the two of us ever since. I'm sorry, Diana said, and the sympathy in her voice seemed genuine. That must be incredibly difficult, we manage. Marcus shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Look, you don't need to take us to dinner. I'm glad I was there to help, but I don't need a reward for being a decent human being. It's not a reward, Diana insisted. I genuinely like to get to know the man who dove into freezing water without a second thought. Not many people like that left in the world. Before Marcus could respond, a knock sounded at the door, and a woman in an expensive suit entered, followed by a man with an earpiece and the alert posture of security. Diana, the car is ready, the woman said, then noticed Marcus. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. This is Marcus Thompson, the man who saved my life, Diana said. Marcus, this is Rebecca, my assistant, and that's James, my security detail. Marcus nodded at them, feeling increasingly out of place. I should go anyway. Got to figure out how to get home without a car. He jogged to the lake from his apartment, which seemed like a lifetime ago. We'll give you a ride, Diana said immediately. It's the least we can do. I couldn't, please, Diana interrupted, and there was something in her eyes, a vulnerability beneath the polished exterior that made Marcus pause. Let me do this one small thing. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself in the back of a luxury sedan that probably cost more than he made in 3 years. Diana sat beside him, directing James to Marcus's apartment in a neighborhood that definitely didn't see many vehicles like this. Rebecca was in the front passenger seat, typing rapidly on her phone, coordinating Diana's schedule around the unexpected hospital visit. You'll need to reschedule the board meeting, Diana was saying. Already done. I told them you were dealing with a personal emergency. That reporter from Tech Weekly called again about the profile piece. I'll handle it tomorrow. Marcus watched the exchange with fascination, getting a glimpse into a world completely foreign to his own. When they pulled up in front of his modest apartment building, he noticed Diana taking in the surroundings without judgment, just curiosity. Thank you for the ride, he said, gathering his bag of wet clothes. Marcus, wait. Diana pulled out her phone. Can I at least get your number? I really would like to stay in touch. He hesitated, and she added, please, you saved my life. Let me buy you coffee at least, or lunch, or dinner with your daughter, whatever you're comfortable with. There was something earnest in her request that got through his defenses. He rattled off his number, and she immediately sent him a text so he'd have hers. There. Now you can't escape. She smiled, and it transformed her face, making her look younger, less like a CEO and more like just a woman. I'll think about dinner, Marcus said, surprising himself. But right now, I need to sleep for about 10 hours. Understandable. Take care of yourself, Marcus Thompson. The way she said his name, with careful attention to each syllable, made something warm unfurl in his chest. He climbed out of the car and watched it pull away, then trudged up to his second-floor apartment. The place was small but clean, Emma's toys organized in bins along one wall, his work clothes hanging to dry in the bathroom. He stood in the shower until the hot water ran out, trying to chase the last of the cold from his bones, then collapsed into bed. His last thought before sleep claimed him was of green eyes and the weight of a business card in his pocket. The next morning, Marcus felt like he'd been hit by a truck. Every muscle ached, and moving required conscious effort. But he dragged himself out of bed, pulled on clean clothes, and drove to Caroline's house to pick up Emma. His daughter came flying out the front door the moment his truck pulled up, her blonde ponytail streaming behind her. Daddy. You're a hero. Everyone at school is talking about it. Marcus caught her as she launched herself at him, lifting her up despite his protesting muscles. Who told everyone at school? Sophie told the teacher, and the teacher told everyone. You saved a lady from drowning. That's so cool. Emma's blue eyes were shining with pride and excitement. It's not cool, sweetie. It was dangerous, and I'm lucky it worked out okay. He set her down and waved at Caroline, who was standing in the doorway with a knowing smile. Coffee, she called out. Desperately, Marcus replied. Inside, Caroline poured him a large mug while Emma chattered about her sleepover with Sophie. Caroline waited until Emma was distracted before saying quietly, I saw the news coverage. That woman you saved is Diana Preston. As in, billionaire tech mogul Diana Preston. She mentioned she ran a tech company, Marcus said carefully. Caroline laughed. She runs one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. She's worth about $2 billion, according to the last Forbes estimate. She studied his face. You really didn't know. I don't keep up with that stuff. Marcus sipped his coffee, relishing the warmth. She wants to take Emma and me to dinner as a thank you. Are you going to go? I don't know. We don't exactly live in the same world. No, Caroline agreed, but she almost died and you saved her. That's got to create some kind of connection. She refilled his mug. For what it's worth, from what I've read about her, she seems like a good person. Lots of charity work, treats her employees well, not your typical ruthless CEO. Marcus nodded, but he wasn't sure what to do with that information. He finished his coffee, thanked Caroline profusely, and took Emma home. They spent the day doing their usual weekend routine, breakfast together, Emma doing her homework while Marcus caught up on laundry, a trip to the park, dinner at their favorite diner. It was simple, comfortable, and exactly what Marcus needed after yesterday's drama. He'd almost forgotten about the business card in his pocket until later that evening, after Emma was in bed, when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Marcus. It's Diana. I hope you're recovering well from yesterday. I've been thinking about you and wanted to make sure you're okay. He stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. I'm fine. Sore, but fine. How are you? Her response came quickly. Same. My muscles are very angry with me. I wanted to thank you again for what you did. I know I keep saying it, but I can't stop thinking about how close I came to dying and how you didn't hesitate to help a complete stranger. Glad I was there at the right time, he typed back. Would you and Emma be free for lunch tomorrow? There's a great family restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy, just good food and a chance to say thank you properly. Marcus hesitated, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Every practical instinct told him to politely decline. They were from different worlds, and getting involved, even as friends, seemed complicated. But something about Diana intrigued him. She'd been vulnerable and real in those moments in the hospital, not at all what he'd expect from a billionaire CEO. What time? He finally typed. They agreed on noon at a place called Murphy's Kitchen, and Marcus went to bed that night with an odd mixture of anticipation and anxiety swirling in his gut. The next morning, he told Emma about the lunch over breakfast. Remember the lady I helped at the lake? She wants to meet you and buy us lunch to say thank you. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? What's she like? She seems nice, but I want you to be on your best behavior, okay? I'm always on my best behavior, Emma protested with the indignation only a 7-year-old could muster. Marcus smiled and ruffled her hair. That's my girl. Murphy's Kitchen turned out to be a comfortable family-style restaurant with exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture that gave it character. Diana was already there when they arrived, sitting at a corner booth, and she stood up when she saw them approach. She was dressed more casually today, in jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without the business attire, she looked younger, more approachable, though Marcus could still see the quality in her clothes and accessories that marked her as someone with money. You must be Emma, Diana said, bending down to Emma's level with a warm smile. I'm Diana. Your dad is a real hero. Emma looked between Diana and Marcus with serious eyes. He's always been my hero, she said matter-of-factly. But I'm glad he could be yours, too. Marcus watched something shift in Diana's expression, a softness that made her even more attractive. You're a lucky girl to have such a great dad. They settled into the booth, Emma between them, and ordered food. The conversation flowed easier than Marcus expected. Diana asked Emma about school, her favorite subjects, what she liked to do for fun. Emma, after her initial shyness, warmed up quickly and soon was chattering about her class guinea pig and how she wanted a pet but their apartment didn't allow animals. That's tough, Diana said sympathetically. I always wanted a dog when I was your age, but my parents traveled too much. Do you have one now? Emma asked. No, I work too much. It wouldn't be fair to the dog. Diana glanced at Marcus. I'm trying to get better about work-life balance, though. Yesterday was a wake-up call in more ways than one. Their food arrived, and Marcus found himself relaxing. Diana wasn't putting on airs or treating them differently, because they clearly had less money. She was genuinely interested in Emma's stories about school, asked Marcus thoughtful questions about his work, and shared funny stories about her own mishaps, learning to use various construction equipment for a charity build day her company had sponsored. You helped build houses? Emma asked, impressed. I mostly just got in the way and hammered my thumb, Diana admitted with a laugh. The real construction workers were very patient with me. Marcus grinned. It takes practice. I've hammered plenty of thumbs in my time. After lunch, Diana surprised them both by pulling out a small wrapped package. I hope this is okay, she said to Marcus before handing it to Emma. I wanted to get you something, but I wasn't sure what you'd like. Emma looked at her father for permission, and he nodded. She carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a beautiful hardcover book about animals. I noticed you talked a lot about animals, Diana explained, and the bookstore owner recommended this one. But if you already have it or don't like it, we can exchange it. I love it. Emma hugged the book to her chest. Thank you, Miss Diana. Just Diana is fine, she said softly, and when she looked at Marcus, he saw something in her eyes that made his breath catch. Not pity or condescension, but genuine warmth and something else, something that looked almost like longing. They walked out of the restaurant together into the crisp afternoon air. Emma was already absorbed in her book, walking between them as they headed toward the parking lot. Thank you for coming, Diana said. I know this probably seemed weird, having lunch with a stranger who crashed into your life. Technically, you crashed into the lake and I jumped in after you, Marcus corrected with a slight smile. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Fair point. She hesitated, then added, I'd like to see you again. Both of you, if that's okay. Marcus should have said no, should have thanked her politely and gone back to his life. But Emma was smiling at Diana with genuine affection, and he couldn't deny that he enjoyed Diana's company more than he'd enjoyed anyone's in a long time. Yeah, he found himself saying. I'd like that too. Over the next few weeks, Diana became a regular part of their lives in a way that surprised everyone, Marcus most of all. She started with small gestures, texting Marcus funny articles she thought he'd like, sending Emma postcards from her business trips with drawings of animals she'd seen. Then came invitations to low-key activities, a weekend visit to the zoo, ice cream after Emma's soccer practice, a movie matinee. Marcus learned that Diana was nothing like what he'd expected from a billionaire CEO. She was down to earth, quick to laugh, and surprisingly lonely. Most of her friendships were complicated by her money and position. She admitted one evening after Emma had fallen asleep during a movie at Diana's penthouse apartment. People always want something, she said quietly, curled up on the opposite end of the couch from Marcus. A job, an introduction, an investment, or they're intimidated by the money and can't see past it. You and Emma treat me like I'm just a person. You are just a person, Marcus replied. A person who happens to be very good at business, but still just a person. She looked at him with such gratitude that he felt something shift between them, the friendship taking on a deeper dimension. Marcus tried to ignore the growing attraction he felt. Diana was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. She was intelligent and funny, patient with Emma, and genuinely interested in Marcus's thoughts and opinions. She listened when he talked about his day, remembered small details he mentioned, and made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt since his wife died. But the gulf between them seemed insurmountable. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and drove a 15-year-old truck. She lived in a penthouse and had a driver. He worried about making rent and saving for Emma's college fund. She could buy his entire apartment building without making a dent in her bank account. One Saturday afternoon, about a month after they met, Diana invited them to a charity gala her company was hosting. "It's a fundraiser for youth education programs," she explained over the phone. "I know it's not really your scene, but I'd really love for you to come. Emma too, if you want. There will be other kids there." Marcus's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't own a tux, didn't know how to navigate that kind of social event, and the thought of being surrounded by billionaires and socialites made him anxious. "I'd pay for your tux rental, of course," Diana added quickly. "And Emma's dress. This is completely my world imposing on yours, so please let me handle the logistics." "Diana, please, Marcus. I have to go to this thing, and I'd really like to have you there. You ground me, make me remember what's actually important." He could hear the vulnerability in her voice, and it was that, more than anything, that made him agree. The next week passed in a blur of tux fittings and Emma's excitement about going to a fancy party. Caroline helped Marcus pick out a tux that made him look, in her words, like James Bond if he'd chosen honest work instead of espionage. Emma's dress was a simple but elegant light blue that made her look older than 7, and Marcus felt his heart squeeze at how much she looked like her mother. The night of the gala, a car picked them up, not Diana's usual driver, but still a luxury sedan that made Emma bounce with excitement. The event was at a downtown hotel ballroom, all glittering chandeliers and elegant decorations. Marcus felt wildly out of place the moment they entered, but then he saw Diana across the room, and everything else faded away. She was stunning in a deep green gown that matched her eyes, her hair swept up in an elegant style that showed off her graceful neck. But when she saw them, her face lit up with such genuine pleasure that she transformed from sophisticated businesswoman to simply Diana, the woman he'd been getting to know. "You made it," she said, coming over to them. "Emma, you look like a princess." "You look like a queen," Emma replied, awed. Diana laughed and offered Emma her hand. "Want to see the dessert table? It's pretty impressive." She led them through the crowd, introducing Marcus to various people, board members, other CEOs, city officials. Marcus shook hands and made polite conversation, hyper-aware of being evaluated and found wanting by some of the guests. But Diana stayed close, her hand occasionally touching his arm or back, a subtle claim that he was with her. The evening was both wonderful and exhausting. Marcus watched Diana give a speech about educational equity that was passionate and articulate, saw her work the room with practiced ease while never losing sight of where he and Emma were, observed the way she commanded respect from everyone present. During dinner, Emma fell asleep with her head on Marcus's shoulder, worn out from the excitement and the late hour. Diana excused herself from the head table and came over to sit with them. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "I should probably get her home. Don't apologize." She was a trooper for staying this long. Diana looked at Emma's sleeping face with tenderness. "She's an amazing kid, Marcus. You've done an incredible job raising her." "Thanks, I do my best." He stroked Emma's hair gently. "Her mom would be proud, I think." "Tell me about her," Diana said softly. "Your wife, if you're comfortable talking about it." Marcus was quiet for a moment, adjusting Emma's weight against his shoulder. "Sarah was great. We met young, got married young, had Emma maybe sooner than we planned, but we were happy." He smiled at the memories. She was a nurse, wanted to help people, got sick herself with cancer when Emma was 2, fought like hell for over a year before she passed. "I'm so sorry," Diana said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "It was hard. Still is sometimes, but I had to be strong for Emma." She needed at least one parent, and I was determined to be everything Sarah and I would have been together. Diana reached over and squeezed his hand. The touch sent warmth up his arm and straight to his chest. "You're an incredible father, and an incredible man." Their eyes met, and Marcus felt the moment stretch between them, charged with possibility. He saw the question in Diana's eyes, the hope, and felt his own heart respond. But then Emma stirred, and the moment broke. "Let me get you a car home," Diana said, pulling back reluctantly. "You need to stay. It's your event. And I've done my duty. Please let me take you home." They slipped out of the gala together, Emma sleeping soundly in Marcus's arms. In the car, Diana sat close, her shoulder touching his, and they rode in comfortable silence. When they reached his apartment, she walked them up to the door. "Thank you for coming tonight," she said as Marcus unlocked the door. "It meant more than you know, having you there. Thanks for inviting us." He shifted Emma's weight. "I should get her to bed." "Right, of course." Diana stepped back, but before she could turn away, Marcus made a decision. "Diana, would you want to have dinner sometime? Just the two of us, I mean." Emma could stay with Caroline. Her face transformed with joy. "Like a date." "Yeah, like a date." "I would love that," she said softly. "I would really love that." They made plans for the following Saturday, and Marcus watched her walk back to the car with a mixture of excitement and terror. He was falling for her, had been falling for weeks now, and it seemed like she felt the same way. But he couldn't shake the worry that their different worlds would eventually tear them apart. The week leading up to their date felt like the longest of Marcus's life. He worked his usual long hours at the construction site, came home to dinner with Emma, helped with homework, did bedtime routines. But underneath it all was a current of anticipation that made everything feel different, heightened, more alive. Diana texted him every day, sometimes funny memes or photos from her day, sometimes longer messages about what she was thinking or feeling. He found himself looking forward to those messages, saving the especially meaningful ones to read again later. On Thursday evening, she called him after Emma was in bed. "I'm nervous about Saturday," she admitted. "Is that silly? I've given presentations to thousands of people, negotiated billion-dollar deals, but the thought of a date with you makes me nervous." "I'm terrified," Marcus confessed. "Haven't been on a date since Sarah died. Not sure I remember how." "Well, that makes two of us." "I haven't dated seriously in years. Too many guys either intimidated by my success or only interested in my money." She paused. "But you're different, Marcus. You see me. The real me." "I like the real you," he said softly. "More than I probably should, given how complicated this could get." "Why does it have to be complicated? Two people who like each other, spending time together, that's not complicated." "Diana, you're a billionaire CEO. I'm a construction foreman who lives paycheck to paycheck. Our lives couldn't be more different." "So what?" There was heat in her voice now, passion. "I don't care about any of that. I care about how you make me laugh, how safe I feel with you, how Emma has become one of my favorite people in the world. I care about the fact that you jumped into freezing water to save a stranger without thinking twice." "That's who you are, Marcus. That's what matters." He was quiet, letting her words sink in, feeling them ease some of the worry that had been gnawing at him. "I'm falling for you," Diana continued, her voice softer now. "I have been since that day at the lake, if I'm honest. And I think, maybe, you might be falling for me too. Can we just see where this goes without worrying about all the logistics?" "Yeah," Marcus said, feeling something loosen in his chest. "Yeah, we can do that." Saturday arrived with bright winter sunshine that made everything feel possible. Marcus dropped Emma off at Caroline's house, where she was excited for a sleepover with Sophie, then went home to get ready. He'd bought a new shirt for the occasion, nothing fancy but nicer than his usual work clothes, and spent probably too long trying to tame his hair. Diana picked him up in her car, not the luxury sedan with a driver, but a sleek sports car that she drove herself. She looked beautiful in a simple red dress, her hair down around her shoulders, and when she smiled at him, Marcus felt his nervousness transform into pure anticipation. "Where are we going?" he asked as she pulled into traffic. It's a surprise, she said with a mischievous grin. But I promise no fancy restaurants where you need 12 forks. This is about us, not impressing anyone. She drove them out of the city, into the countryside, talking the whole time about her week, asking about his, the conversation as easy as always. After about 40 minutes, she pulled up to what looked like a farmhouse that had been converted into a restaurant, warm light glowing from the windows, smoke rising from a chimney. "What is this place?" Marcus asked. "Best kept secret in the state," Diana replied. Farm-to-table restaurant run by a couple who used to be high-end chefs in New York. They got tired of the rat race and moved out here to do what they love. The food is incredible, the atmosphere is cozy, and nobody here cares who I am or how much money I have. The restaurant was perfect. They were seated at a small table near the fireplace, and the owner, a cheerful woman named Helen, brought them wine and told them about the evening's menu. Everything was locally sourced, prepared with obvious care and passion. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. Diana told him about growing up as the only child of ambitious parents who had more money than time, about building her company from the ground up in her 20s, about the loneliness of success. Marcus shared stories about his childhood in a big, boisterous family, about meeting Sarah in high school and thinking he'd spend forever with her, about the terror and joy of raising Emma alone. "You're not alone anymore," Diana said softly, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I mean, you don't have to be, if you don't want to be." Marcus turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. "I haven't wanted to let anyone in," he admitted. "Seemed easier to focus on Emma, on work, on just getting through each day. But then you fell into that lake, and everything changed." "Best worst day of my life," Diana said with a small smile. "I almost died, but I found you." They lingered over dessert, neither wanting the evening to end. When they finally left, Diana drove them back toward the city but pulled off at a scenic overlook that gave a view of the lights spread out below them. "I used to come here when I was younger," she said, turning off the engine. "Whenever business got stressful, whenever I felt overwhelmed. Something about seeing the city like this, small and manageable from a distance, helped put things in perspective." They got out of the car and stood at the railing, the cold air biting but not unbearable. Diana moved closer to Marcus, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders without thinking, pulling her against his side. She fit perfectly, her head tucking under his chin, and they stood like that for a long moment, just being together. "Marcus," Diana said finally, pulling back enough to look up at him. "I meant what I said on the phone. I'm falling for you. Actually, I think I've already fallen. Completely. Terrifyingly. You and Emma have become the best part of my life." He looked down at her, at those green eyes that had haunted him since the first moment he'd seen them, and let himself acknowledge what he'd been trying to deny for weeks. "I'm in love with you," he said simply. "Probably shouldn't be, probably going to make everything complicated, but I am." Diana's smile was radiant. "Then kiss me already." He did, and it was everything a first kiss should be, tender and passionate, tentative and certain all at once. She tasted like the chocolate dessert they'd shared and something uniquely her, and Marcus felt like he was falling all over again, only this time into something warm and wonderful instead of icy water. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Diana laughed softly. "So that's what I've been missing." "Yeah," Marcus brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Yeah, I've never felt like this before, never felt so completely seen and valued just for being me." She kissed him again, softer this time. "I love you too, Marcus Thompson." "I love you, and I love your incredible daughter, and I love the life you've built through sheer determination and heart." They stayed at the Overlook for another hour, talking and kissing and making plans. When Diana finally drove him home, they sat in the car outside his apartment building for another 30 minutes, unable to say goodbye. "I should go," Marcus said for the third time, making no move to leave. "Probably," Diana agreed, kissing him again. Finally, he forced himself to get out of the car, but he leaned back in through the window. "Come to brunch tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just me and Emma and probably burnt pancakes." "I would love nothing more," Diana said. Marcus watched her drive away, then headed up to his apartment, with his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. He texted Caroline that he'd pick Emma up in the morning and got back a series of knowing emojis that made him laugh. The next morning, Marcus picked up Emma, who immediately demanded details about his date. "Is Miss Diana your girlfriend now?" she asked with the directness only children possessed. "Maybe," Marcus said carefully. "How would you feel about that?" Emma was quiet for a moment, thinking it over with the seriousness she applied to important matters. "I like Miss Diana a lot," she said finally. "She's nice to me and she makes you smile more. Is she coming over?" "For brunch, if that's okay with you. Can we make those special pancakes?" "With chocolate chips?" "Definitely." They stopped at the grocery store to pick up ingredients, and Emma was so excited she could barely contain herself. Back at the apartment, they worked together to prepare brunch, Emma carefully measuring flour while Marcus mixed batter. The apartment was filled with warmth and the smell of cooking when Diana arrived, carrying a bag of fresh fruit and orange juice. "I didn't want to come empty-handed," she explained, then squeaked as Emma launched herself at Diana's legs for a hug. "Daddy says you might be his girlfriend," Emma announced. Diana looked at Marcus over Emma's head, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Did he now?" Marcus felt his ears heat. "Emma, what happened to keeping secrets?" "You didn't say it was a secret," Emma protested. Diana laughed and knelt down to Emma's level. "Well, I hope he's right, because I would very much like to be his girlfriend. But that also means spending more time with you, and I need to know if you're okay with that." Emma looked between them seriously. "Will you do fun stuff with us? Not just boring grown-up things?" "Definitely." "I like fun stuff way better than boring grown-up things. And will you be nice to my daddy? Because he's the best daddy in the world and he deserves nice things." Diana's expression softened. "I will be so nice to your daddy, I promise." "Okay then." Emma nodded decisively. "You can be his girlfriend." Brunch was chaotic and perfect. They burned the first batch of pancakes because Marcus got distracted kissing Diana, much to Emma's delighted disgust. They played board games after eating, and Diana proved to be extremely competitive at Candyland, which made Emma laugh until she had hiccups. Later, after Emma had settled in with a coloring book, Diana and Marcus sat together on the couch, her feet tucked under his leg, his arm around her shoulders. "This is nice," Diana said softly. "Just being here, being normal." "This is my life," Marcus replied. "It's not glamorous." "It's perfect." She tilted her head to look at him. "I meant what I said to Emma. I want to be part of this, Marcus. Part of your life, part of her life, however that looks. It won't always be easy," he warned. "Emma's my priority, always will be. I wouldn't want it any other way. Her being your priority is one of the things I love most about you." Diana traced patterns on his arm absently. "I know we need to figure out logistics eventually. My schedule is crazy, and there's a lot of scrutiny that comes with being with me, but we can work through it together, right?" "Together," Marcus agreed, feeling the rightness of it settle into his bones. Over the next few months, they figured out their rhythm. Diana started spending weekends at Marcus's apartment rather than having them always come to her penthouse. She learned to navigate his neighborhood, became a regular at their favorite diner, joined them for Emma's soccer games. Marcus gradually got more comfortable in Diana's world, attending company events and business dinners, though he always preferred their quiet evenings at home. The media eventually caught wind of their relationship, and there was a brief flurry of attention that made Marcus deeply uncomfortable. Photos of them at dinner, articles speculating about Diana's mystery blue-collar boyfriend, invasive questions about his late wife and his finances. But Diana handled it with practiced grace, making a public statement about respecting her private life and refusing to engage with the more salacious coverage. "I'm sorry," she told Marcus one evening after a particularly aggressive paparazzi encounter outside his apartment building. "I hate that my life brings this into yours." "We'll deal with it," Marcus said, though the attention made him anxious about Emma's safety and privacy. "But if it gets worse, if it starts affecting Emma, then we'll figure something out. I won't let her be hurt by this. I promise." Fortunately, the media interest died down after a few weeks when some celebrity couple provided more interesting drama. Life returned to something approaching normal, though Marcus's normal now included a brilliant, beautiful woman who loved him and his daughter with fierce devotion. 6 months after their first date, Diana took them on vacation to a beach house she owned in California. It was the first real vacation Marcus had taken since Sarah died, and the first time Emma had seen the ocean. Watching his daughter's face light up as she ran into the waves, hearing Diana's laughter as they played in the surf together, Marcus felt a sense of contentment he'd thought he'd never experience again. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed exhausted from a day of swimming and building sandcastles, Marcus and Diana sat on the beach watching the sunset. Diana was quiet, which was unusual for her, and Marcus could sense she had something on her mind. "You okay?" he asked, pulling her closer. "I've been thinking about the future," Diana said carefully. "About what I want, what we want, and I need to know where you stand on something." Marcus's heart rate picked up, nervous anticipation flooding through him. "What is it?" "Emma asked me the other day if I was going to be her new mom," Diana said, not looking at him. "I told her that was between you and me, and that it was a big decision that we'd have to talk about. But it made me realize that I want that, Marcus. I want to be in her life officially, permanently." "I want to be in your life that way, too." Marcus was quiet, processing. He'd been thinking about the same thing, had been for months actually, but the fear of moving too fast had held him back. "She's 7 years old," he said finally. "She needs stability, needs to know that people she loves aren't going to disappear. If we do this, if we make it official, I need to know you're all in. Not just now, but for the long haul." Diana turned to face him, her green eyes intense. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "I love you, Marcus. I love Emma. I want breakfast chaos and soccer games and homework battles and all of it. I want to be part of this family, if you'll have me." Marcus cupped her face in his hands, these hands that had pulled her from icy water and had somehow, impossibly, won her heart. "I love you. Emma loves you, and yes, we'll have you. Permanently." They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, and Marcus felt like his life had come full circle. He'd lost Sarah, had learned to live with that grief, had built a good life for Emma on his own. But now he had a chance at something more, at a partnership and love he'd thought was lost to him forever. "So how do we do this?" Diana asked, laughing a little. "Do I move into your apartment? Do you move into my penthouse? Do we find somewhere new? We figure it out together," Marcus replied. "But maybe somewhere with a bit more space, and that allows pets because Emma's been asking about a dog." "A dog," Diana grinned. "I can handle a dog. I can handle anything as long as I have you." They told Emma the next day, sitting her down at breakfast and explaining that Diana was going to be a permanent part of their family. Emma's response was to squeal with joy and demand to know if this meant she could get a puppy. "How about we focus on one big change at a time," Marcus said, laughing at his daughter's priorities. The rest of the vacation was spent making plans, imagining their future together. When they returned home, they started house hunting, looking for a place that could be theirs, not his or hers, but theirs together. It took a while to find the right fit, a comfortable house in a good school district with a yard big enough for that promised dog. Marcus was nervous about the financial arrangements. The house they found was far beyond what he could afford, even with his share of the down payment. Diana insisted it didn't matter, that money was the least important thing, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to contribute equally. "Look at it this way," Diana said one evening as they reviewed mortgage documents. "I have more money, that's just a fact. But you bring other things to this relationship that are equally valuable. "You're an incredible father. You keep me grounded. You make me laugh and make me think and make me a better person. This isn't about everything being financially equal. It's about us both giving what we have to make a life together." "I just don't want to feel like I'm living off you," Marcus admitted. "And I don't want you to work yourself to death trying to keep up with my net worth," Diana countered. "Can we find a middle ground? You contribute what's comfortable for you, and I handle the rest. And in return, you handle things like making sure I remember to eat during busy work periods and teaching me how to build furniture from scratch and being the steady presence Emma needs." It made sense, even if it still made Marcus uncomfortable. But he was learning that love sometimes meant accepting help, accepting that different people brought different strengths to a partnership. They moved into the new house in early spring, a year after Diana had fallen into the icy lake. Emma got her puppy, a goofy golden retriever they named Charlie, and watching Diana play with the dog in their backyard, Marcus felt a surge of happiness so intense it almost hurt. He proposed on a quiet evening a month after they moved in. Nothing elaborate or fancy, just the two of them on the porch after Emma had gone to bed, the stars bright overhead. He'd bought a simple ring with money he'd been saving from overtime shifts, determined that this at least would come entirely from him. "Diana Preston," he said, dropping to one knee on their porch. "You jumped into my life by falling into a lake, and you've made every day since then brighter. Will you marry me?" She said yes before he even finished the question, tears streaming down her face as she pulled him up to kiss him. The ring fit perfectly, and they sat on the porch for hours, planning their future. They decided on a small wedding, just close friends and family in the fall. Diana's assistant Rebecca, who had become a good friend, helped with the planning. Emma was thrilled to be flower girl and took her duties very seriously, practicing walking down the aisle with Charlie following behind her. Marcus's family flew in from across the country, and Diana's parents came from their home in Europe. The meeting between their families went better than expected. Diana's parents were initially skeptical, Marcus could tell, but Emma won them over completely within about 10 minutes, and seeing how Diana looked at Marcus seemed to convince them he was genuine. The wedding itself was perfect. They held it in the garden of their new house, late afternoon sunshine filtering through the trees. Emma walked down the aisle scattering flower petals with Charlie trotting beside her, and then Diana appeared, and Marcus forgot how to breathe. She was radiant in a simple white dress, her hair down around her shoulders, carrying wildflowers instead of an elaborate bouquet. But what made her beautiful was the joy on her face, the love in her eyes as she walked toward him. The ceremony was short, their vows simple but heartfelt. Marcus promised to love her and Emma with everything he had, to build a life together based on respect and partnership. Diana promised to honor what they were building, to be the partner and parent they needed, to choose them every day for the rest of her life. When the officiant pronounced them married and Marcus kissed his wife for the first time, he heard Emma cheer loudly, making all their guests laugh. The reception was relaxed and fun, dinner and dancing in their backyard with the people who mattered most. Marcus danced with Emma first, his daughter standing on his feet as he waltzed her around, then with Diana, holding his wife close and marveling at how his life had changed. "Happy?" Diana asked, her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music. "Incredibly," Marcus replied. "You." "More than I ever thought possible." She pulled back to look at him. "Thank you for jumping into that lake. Thank you for falling in." They honeymooned for a week in Hawaii, while Emma stayed with Caroline and Sophie, but both of them spent most of the trip talking about how much they missed Emma and couldn't wait to get home. When they finally returned, Emma launched herself at them at the airport, and Marcus felt complete. Life settled into a new rhythm. Diana cut back her hours at work, delegating more and making sure she was home for dinner most nights. Marcus took on a promotion at work that meant better pay and more predictable hours. Emma thrived with the stability and the expanded family, her confidence growing. A year into their marriage, Diana and Marcus started talking about having another child. Emma was enthusiastic about the idea of a sibling, already making plans for teaching the baby everything she knew. "Are you sure?" Marcus asked Diana one night. "It's a huge commitment, and your career, I want this," Diana interrupted. "I want a baby with you. I want Emma to have a sibling. I want our family to grow." It took several months, but eventually Diana got pregnant. The pregnancy was harder than expected, morning sickness lasting well into the second trimester. But she handled it with the same determination she brought to everything. Emma was involved every step of the way, talking to Diana's growing belly and helping set up the nursery. Marcus watched his wife and daughter together and felt overwhelmed by gratitude for how his life had turned out. Their son, Ryan, was born on a snowy December evening, 8 pounds of perfect, screaming baby. Emma held him in the hospital and declared him the best present ever. Marcus held his son for the first time and felt the same surge of fierce protectiveness he'd felt when Emma was born, the same determination to be the best father he could be. Diana was an incredible mother, natural and loving despite her fears that her own childhood hadn't prepared her for parenting. She took to late-night feedings and diaper changes with the same focus she brought to business deals, but with so much more heart. The first year of Ryan's life was chaotic and exhausting and wonderful. Emma adjusted to being a big sister with enthusiasm, Diana balanced motherhood and work with increasing confidence, and Marcus felt like the luckiest man alive. On the 2-year anniversary of their wedding, they had a quiet dinner at home after both kids were asleep. Ryan was walking now, getting into everything, and Emma was 9 and growing more independent every day. "Can you believe it's only been 2 years?" Diana asked, leaning against Marcus on the couch. "Feels like you've been in my life forever." "I was thinking the same thing," Marcus replied. "Hard to remember what life was like before." "Cold," Diana said with a slight smile, "literally and figuratively. I was going through the motions, building my company, making money, but not really living. Then I fell into that lake and you saved me in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Marcus corrected. "You gave me permission to love again, to open my heart when I thought it was permanently closed. You gave Emma a mother, gave me a partner, gave us both the family we needed." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from deep understanding and complete trust. Charlie snored at their feet, and the baby monitor showed Ryan sleeping peacefully. Upstairs, Emma's night light glowed softly. "You know what I think about sometimes," Diana said quietly. "What if you hadn't been running by the lake that day? What if you'd been 5 minutes earlier or later? What if you'd decided not to jump in?" "Don't think about the what-ifs," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "We're here now, that's what matters." "You're right." She turned to kiss him properly. "We're here and we're happy, and we built something beautiful together." Years continued to pass, bringing all the normal joys and challenges of family life. Emma grew into a teenager, smart and confident and kind. Ryan followed in his sister's footsteps, inheriting his father's easy manner and his mother's sharp mind. Diana's company continued to thrive under her leadership, though she maintained better balance than she had before meeting Marcus. Marcus eventually started his own small construction company, building custom homes, Diana's business acumen and financial backing helping him get established. They had their struggles, of course. Parenting teenagers was hard. Running businesses was stressful. But they faced everything together, the partnership they'd built strong enough to weather any storm. On the 10-year anniversary of the day Marcus jumped into the lake, they took the family back to that spot. Emma was 16 now, Ryan was 8, and Charlie was old and gray but still wagging his tail. "This is where it all started," Diana told the kids, standing at the edge of the dock. "This is where your dad became my hero." "Tell the story again," Ryan demanded. At 8, he never tired of the story of how his parents met, so Marcus and Diana told it together, the way they always did, trading off parts. The icy water, the fear, the rescue. The hospital, the first lunch, the gala. First kiss, first I love you, the proposal and wedding. Emma rolled her eyes at the romantic parts the way only teenagers could, but Marcus saw her smiling. Ryan listened with wide eyes, declaring that Daddy was definitely a hero. Your dad is a hero, Diana agreed, looking at Marcus with all the love of their years together. But the real heroism isn't just that one jump into the lake. It's every day he chooses to show up, to be present, to love us with his whole heart. You do the same, Marcus replied softly. As the sun set over the lake, turning the water golden, Marcus stood with his wife and children and dog and thought about the journey that had brought them here. A single moment of courage, of choosing to help someone in need, had changed everything. He'd been afraid that day, jumping into freezing water with no guarantee he'd survive. But he'd done it anyway, because someone needed help, and it was the right thing to do. He'd been afraid again when he'd started falling for Diana, terrified of opening his heart, worried about the differences between them. But he'd taken that leap too, and it had led to this. A life richer and fuller than he'd ever imagined possible. What are you thinking about? Diana asked, slipping her hand into his. Marcus looked at her, at this incredible woman who had come into his life so unexpectedly, who had loved him and Emma so completely, who had given them Ryan and built this beautiful life with them. I'm thinking about how sometimes the scariest leaps lead to the best landings, he said. Diana smiled, the same brilliant smile that had captivated him in the hospital all those years ago. And I'm thinking about how grateful I am that you were brave enough to jump. Always, Marcus promised, pulling her close and kissing her as their children groaned in mock disgust and Charlie barked happily. For you, I'll always jump. They stood there as a family, at the place where everything began, and looked toward a future bright with promise. The lake was calm now, peaceful, giving no hint of the drama it had witnessed a decade earlier. But Marcus would always remember that day, would always be grateful for the icy water that had brought Diana into his life, because some people are worth jumping into freezing lakes for. Some people are worth taking chances for. Some people are worth every moment of fear and uncertainty and risk. Diana was that person for him. And he, she always said, was that person for her. Their love story had started with a rescue, but it had become so much more than that. It had become a partnership, a family, a life built on mutual respect and deep affection, and the simple choice to keep choosing each other every single day. As they walked back to their car, Ryan riding on Marcus's shoulders and Emma walking beside Diana, talking about her plans for college, Marcus felt the weight of contentment settle over him. This was his life now. This beautiful, chaotic, perfect life. And it all started with one jump into icy water to save a stranger who became his everything. Later that night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Marcus and Diana stood on their back porch, looking up at the stars. Do you ever wonder how different things could have been? Diana asked, if we'd met some other way. Sometimes, Marcus admitted, but I think we would have found each other eventually. Some things are just meant to be. I like that idea. Diana leaned against him, and they stood together in comfortable silence. You know what Emma asked me the other day, Diana said after a while. She asked if I ever thought about what would have happened if you hadn't saved me, if I would have survived somehow, gone on with my life, never knowing you existed. What did you tell her? I told her that I would have survived, probably. Someone else might have helped, or I might have managed to save myself. But that's not really living. I wasn't really living before I met you and Emma. I was just going through motions, accumulating success without joy. You gave me joy, Marcus. You and Emma and Ryan, you made my life worth living. Marcus turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. After all these years, she still took his breath away. You did the same for me. After Sarah died, I thought the best I could hope for was just getting through each day, being a good father to Emma. I didn't think I deserved happiness again. You showed me I was wrong. They kissed, gentle and familiar, the kiss of two people who knew each other completely and loved each other anyway. When they pulled apart, Diana was smiling. "Thank you for jumping into that lake," she said again, the words that had become something of a private joke between them. "Thank you for being worth the jump," Marcus replied, the response he always gave. They went inside together, checking on the kids one more time before going to bed themselves. Ryan was sprawled across his bed, one arm around a stuffed dinosaur. Emma's room was decorated with soccer trophies and photos of friends, and she was asleep with her phone still in her hand. Marcus carefully removed it and plugged it in to charge, kissing her forehead gently. In their own room, Marcus and Diana got ready for bed with the practiced ease of a couple who had shared thousands of nights together. As they settled under the covers, Diana curled into Marcus's side the way she always did, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "I love you," she murmured, already half asleep. "I love you too," Marcus replied, meaning it with every fiber of his being. He lay awake a while longer, listening to Diana's breathing even out into sleep, thinking about the incredible journey that had brought them here. From a desperate rescue in freezing water to this warm bed, this beautiful home, this life they'd built together. It seemed almost impossible, like something from a fairy tale, but it was real. The woman sleeping beside him was real. Their children down the hall were real. The love they shared was as real and solid as anything Marcus had ever known. He thought about that day by the lake sometimes, wondered what would have happened if he'd been running a different route, if Diana had chosen a different location for her photos, if any of 100 small variables had been different. Would they have met some other way? Would they have found each other despite the odds? Marcus liked to think they would have. Liked to believe that some connections were strong enough to transcend circumstance, that he and Diana were always meant to find each other. But he was also grateful for the way it had happened, for the moment of courage that had set everything in motion. It had taught him something important, that the scariest decisions often led to the best outcomes, that love was worth the risk, that opening your heart even when you were terrified was better than keeping it closed and safe. He'd jumped into freezing water to save a stranger, and in doing so, he'd saved himself too. Saved himself from a half-life of going through the motions, from never risking his heart again, from letting fear make his decisions. Diana stirred in her sleep, mumbling something unintelligible and burrowing closer. Marcus held her a little tighter, overwhelmed with love for this woman who had changed everything. Tomorrow they'd wake up to the chaos of getting kids ready for school, to work demands and household chores and all the mundane details of daily life. But underneath, it all would be this foundation of love and partnership, the certainty that they were in this together, that whatever challenges came their way, they'd face them as a team. It was more than Marcus had ever dreamed of having. More than he'd thought possible after Sarah died, when he'd been convinced that his chance at love had died with her, but life had surprised him. Had taught him that the heart has room for multiple loves, that finding Diana didn't diminish what he'd had with Sarah, that Emma could love Diana as a mother while still honoring the memory of the mother she'd lost. Love, Marcus had learned, wasn't finite. It didn't run out or get used up. It expanded to fill whatever space was available, growing and adapting and flourishing when nurtured. And he and Diana nurtured their love carefully, tending it with daily kindness and regular communication, and the simple act of choosing each other over and over again. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. As sleep finally claimed him, Marcus's last conscious thought was of gratitude. Gratitude for the twist of fate that had put him by that lake on that particular day. Gratitude for the courage to jump. Gratitude for Diana's willingness to let him into her life. Gratitude for the family they'd created together. He fell asleep with a smile on his face, his wife in his arms, and his heart full of joy. The end.